Orion Hale had traveled to many planets in his life, but nothing felt as peaceful as the learning colony on Lumeria 4. The tall silver buildings always glowed softly under the lavender sky, and gentle winds carried the sound of distant waterfalls. Every corner of the colony was filled with calm movements, quiet conversations, and the light hum of alien students practicing their energy-based writing symbols. Humans rarely taught here, so his presence alone made many turn their heads with curiosity. But Orion didn't mind. He was used to standing out. However, on his first week in the colony, someone stood out even more. A young Lumerian woman who always stayed in the corner of the class, away from everyone else. Her name was Lyra. She had pale blue skin, bright silver eyes, and delicate hair that shimmered like morning frost. She looked gentle, almost fragile, yet her gaze carried something heavy like fear, mixed with secrets she didn't want anyone to know. Every day, students around her practiced reading symbols from their data tablets. They traced shapes in the air, and the glowing marks floated like small stars. But Lyra never traced anything. She held the tablet in her hands, stared at it for long minutes, and then quietly returned it to her desk without writing a single symbol. At first, Orion thought she was simply shy, but the more he watched her, the more he realized that she wasn't just avoiding the class, she was terrified of it. The teacher often walked by her desk, expecting her to participate, but she always lowered her eyes and pretended not to hear. The other students sometimes whispered about her, wondering why someone like her would struggle with something as basic as reading. Some even laughed quietly, but she never reacted. She had learned long ago how to hide pain. On the fourth day, the teacher asked each student to come forward and read a short sentence from the tablet. One by one, the Lumerians approached the front of the class, their voices calm and confident. Then the teacher called Lyra's name. She froze. Her hands tightened around her tablet, her breath hitched. Orion saw her shoulders tremble, though she tried hard to keep them still. Slowly, she stood up. But her feet moved only a few steps before she stopped again. Her silver eyes darted around the room, looking for a way out. But there was none. When the teacher encouraged her again, she shook her head. Finally, she whispered something. But her voice was too low for anyone to understand. The teacher, confused, stepped closer. Before he could ask again, Lyra took a step back, dropped the tablet, and hurried out of the room. The tablet hit the floor with a soft sound, and the symbols scattered in the air like broken lights. The whole class fell silent. The teacher sighed, but Orion couldn't ignore what he saw. He picked up the tablet and quietly excused himself. He followed the path outside, searching each hallway until he found her standing behind one of the tall crystal pillars that lined the courtyard. She had her arms wrapped around herself, and she kept breathing in short, shaky breaths. Her eyes were red, as if she had been trying not to cry. Orion approached her carefully, making sure not to startle her. "Lyra," he said gently, "are you okay?" She looked up quickly, surprised that he had followed her. She tried to straighten her posture, but her emotions were too strong to hide. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I'm fine. You should go back." But Orion didn't move. He stood a few steps away, giving her space but showing he wasn't leaving. "I saw how scared you looked. You don't have to pretend." Her eyes widened. Nobody had ever spoken to her that way honestly, gently, without judgment. Still, she shook her head again. "It doesn't matter. I shouldn't be here. I can't do what the others do." Orion tilted his head. "Why not?" Lyra hesitated. Her fingers twisted together anxiously. She looked down. Her voice became even smaller. "Because I don't know how to read or write." The words fell from her mouth like something she had held inside for years. She expected Orion to react with shock. Maybe he would laugh. Maybe he would pity her. Maybe he would walk away like everyone else in her life. She braced herself for it. But Orion just gave a calm, warm smile. "That's okay," he said softly. "You can learn." Her breath caught. She had never heard anyone say those words to her. Not once in her entire life. In her clan, knowledge was reserved only for those born into the right families. Children like her were told from birth that they were not meant to learn. They were told to stay quiet, follow orders, and never question anything. "You don't understand," she whispered, shaking her head. "Everyone here grew up reading. They learned symbols before they learned to walk. I'm too far behind." "Everyone starts somewhere," Orion said simply. Lyra blinked, confused. Humans thought so differently from her people. For them, learning was something that could happen at any age. But for her, it was something forbidden, something dangerous. "You're not embarrassed?" she asked quietly. "No," Orion replied. "Why would I be? You're trying. That's what matters." His words filled the empty parts of her heart with warmth she didn't know she needed. For years, she had been called slow, useless, unworthy. Now, someone, a human, even was looking at her as if she had value. Orion gently picked up her tablet and handed it to her. "If you want," he said, "I can teach you. After class. Or any time. You don't have to do this alone." Lyra hesitated. Her hands shook when she accepted the tablet. She looked down at the glowing symbols she couldn't understand. A tiny spark of courage lit inside her. If you really think I can learn, then I want to try." Orion smiled, relieved she trusted him. "Good. We'll start today." They returned to the classroom together, though Lyra stayed close behind him, still nervous. After lessons ended, they sat in a quiet corner of the learning hall. Orion opened the tablet and showed her the first symbol, a basic Lumerian mark used in almost every written sentence. "This one means sound," he explained. Lyra repeated the shape with her finger in the air. But her line wobbled. The floating symbol she created flickered weakly before fading. She winced in embarrassment. "I'm sorry. I'm slow." 4. 4. 4. 4. "You're not slow," Orion corrected. "You're learning. That's different." She tried again. And again. And again. Her hands trembled each time, and sweat gathered on her forehead, but Orion stayed patient. He praised every small improvement and never made her feel foolish. Slowly, her finger strokes became steadier. By the 10th attempt, the symbol floated clearly in the air, glowing softly. Lyra gasped and backed away in surprise. I did it?" "You did," Orion said proudly. "See? I told you." For the first time that day, she smiled a small, fragile smile, but real. They practiced for over an hour. Each time she learned a new symbol, her face brightened with quiet pride. At one point, her memory energy reacted to her excitement, making her symbols shimmer with soft white sparks. Orion watched, impressed. He had never seen a Lumerian beginner produce such clear energy. She had potential she didn't even know about. "You're doing great," he said. Lyra lowered her head shyly, but the corners of her lips curved upward. No one had ever encouraged her like this. No one had believed she could learn anything at all. Orion didn't just teach her symbols, he gave her hope. As they finished, the sky outside darkened. The lavender clouds shifted to deeper shades of violet. Lyra stood up slowly, holding her tablet close to her chest, as if it were something precious. She looked at Orion and spoke softly. "Thank you for helping me." "You're welcome," he said. "And remember, you belong here." Her breath trembled at the words. She repeated them quietly to herself after he left, as if testing their truth. You belong here. No one had ever told her that before. Not her family. Not her clan. Not her teachers back home. But Orion said it like a promise, like a truth she deserved. That night, in her small sleeping chamber, Lyra stared at the symbols she had practiced. She traced them again and again, smiling each time they glowed. She whispered Orion's words again, letting them sink into her heart. She didn't feel like an outsider anymore. She didn't feel hopeless. For the first time in her life, she felt she might truly have a place in the world. And deep inside herself, she made a quiet decision. She would learn. She would try. She would grow. Not because others demanded it, but because someone finally believed she could. Lyra returned to class the next morning with a mix of fear and excitement twisting inside her. Her steps were small, almost hesitant, but she didn't walk alone. Orion noticed her the moment she entered. He gave her a small nod of encouragement, and immediately, her heartbeat calmed. The hall was full of students, practicing symbols and reading aloud. Some glanced at her, remembering the previous day's incident, but she reminded herself of Orion's words. You belong here. For the first half of the lesson, Lyra kept her tablet close and practiced quietly. She traced the symbols Orion had taught her the night before. Her finger glowed faintly with her memory energy, and each shape she created floated softly in the air. She still struggled with some, but she could see improvement. She felt something she had never felt before: progress. But not everyone viewed her presence with kindness. 3 students from the advanced group sat close by, whispering among themselves. Their eyes flicked toward her with judgment. One of them, a tall Lumerian boy named Zarin, smirked as he watched her trace the symbols slowly. She still can't write properly, he muttered to his friends. Why do they let someone like her stay here? Another added, maybe she begged them to let her join. Lyra heard everything. Her fingers froze mid-air, and the glowing symbol she was forming shattered into tiny sparks. Her cheeks warmed with embarrassment. She lowered her tablet and kept her eyes on the floor. She had thought she was becoming stronger, but hearing words so similar to the ones she had heard all her life shook her confidence again. Orion, sitting not far behind, noticed instantly. He glanced at the group of whispering students, but instead of confronting them, he approached Lyra quietly. Are you okay? He asked in a low, calm voice. She nodded quickly, hiding the hurt in her eyes. Yes, I'm fine. But Orion had spent enough time studying people to know when someone wasn't fine. He didn't push her to talk. Instead, he sat beside her and gently guided her hand back to the tablet. Let's go over the symbols again, he said softly. Lyra hesitated. She whispered, They're right. I'm slower than everyone else. Orion shook his head. You're learning something that others have practiced since they were tiny children. You're not behind. You're just starting. His voice was steady, warm, and honest. It helped her breathe again. She lifted her finger and began tracing the symbol he had showed her. It came out shaky the first time, and Zarin smirked again. But Orion didn't let her look in their direction. Try again, he whispered. She did. The symbol stabilized a little. Again. She repeated it. Her movements grew smoother. Again. This time, the symbol glowed bright and steady, floating clearly in the air. She gasped softly as it shimmered like a tiny star. That's it, Orion said proudly. You're getting stronger. Lyra's silver eyes brightened. She didn't say anything, but her heart lifted a little. Orion's calm encouragement felt like a shield between her and the world. Slowly, she allowed herself to believe that maybe she could improve. Maybe she could stay. During the break, she went to the courtyard with Orion. The air outside was fresh, carrying the gentle scent of crystalline flowers that grew in neat lines along the pathway. Lyra sat under the shade of a tall glass tree, its branches glowing softly in the wind. Orion sat beside her. Why do they dislike me? She asked quietly. Orion looked thoughtful. Sometimes people dislike what they don't understand. or they feel threatened by someone who learns differently. But I'm not threatening. You don't have to be, Orion replied. Sometimes kindness and effort can make others insecure. His explanation confused her at first. She had always believed that learning and improvement were good things. She didn't know they could make others uncomfortable. After a moment, Orion added, "You don't need their approval. You only need to keep going." Lyra nodded, though she still felt a tiny ache inside her chest. The second half of the lesson introduced new memory symbols. These ones were more complex, with layered meanings. The teacher projected them into the air, allowing students to analyze their structure. Most students began practicing immediately. Lyra studied the symbols carefully, taking her time to understand their shapes. She wanted to learn them properly, not rush and make mistakes. But her energy behaved strangely. The moment she traced the new symbol, the glowing shape didn't just appear. It expanded. It pulsed. The lines brightened in a way the teacher had not shown. Other symbols around her reacted, rising gently as if drawn toward hers. The nearby students gasped. The teacher, startled, hurried toward her. "Lyra, stop, stop." She froze, pulling back her hand. The symbol burst in a wave of shimmering particles that drifted across the room like white dust. Everyone stared. Lyra looked down, horrified. She whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." The teacher's eyes widened in confusion, not anger. "How long have you been training with your memory energy?" I haven't," she stammered. "This was an accident." The teacher exchanged a look with the other instructors. Orion stepped forward quickly. "She's still learning the basics," he explained. "She just needs guidance." Zarin muttered loudly. "Or maybe she shouldn't be here at all." This time, Lyra didn't just tremble, she felt a painful twist inside her chest. Her eyes stung with tears she didn't want anyone to see. She turned away, clutching her tablet tightly. But before she could leave, Orion spoke up. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried strength. "She belongs here as much as anyone else." The room went silent. Orion's gaze moved toward Zaran, though his tone remained calm. "She works harder than half the students here, and she's learning faster than most beginners I've met. If effort determines who deserves a place here, Lyra, more than qualifies." Lyra stood still, stunned by the quiet power in Orion's voice. No one had ever defended her before, not like this, not in front of everyone. Zaran looked embarrassed, but Orion didn't give him more attention. Instead, he placed a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Let's step outside for a moment." They walked to the balcony overlooking the shimmering forest. The wind brushed past gently, cooling Lyra's flushed cheeks. She wiped her eyes quickly, frustrated that she couldn't hide her weakness. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I caused trouble again." "You didn't cause anything," Orion replied. "Your energy reacted to learning. That's not wrong, it's rare." She blinked. "Rare?" Orion nodded. "Your memory energy responds to your emotions stronger than most Lumerians. That means your learning ability is unique." Lyra stared at him, confused. "But I'm not special. I've always been told that I can't learn anything." "That was a lie," Orion said gently. "A lie you heard so many times that you believed it." His words made her chest tighten. She looked away, afraid to accept them. But Orion wasn't finished. "Lyra, you're not just learning. You're awakening abilities you never knew you had. That's not something to be ashamed of." She swallowed hard. The idea felt unreal, impossible. How could she be someone with rare potential when she had spent her entire life being treated as worthless? Orion smiled softly. "You're not behind. You were held back. That's different." The truth struck her like a warm light spreading through her heart. She felt her throat tighten. "Do you really think I can learn? That I can Become better? I know you can, Orion answered. You prove it every day. A gentle wind swept through, lifting strands of her shimmering hair. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting his reassurance steady her. When they returned to class, the atmosphere had changed. Some students still stared, but others watched her with curiosity instead of judgment. The teacher approached her carefully. Lyra, may I see the symbol again? The one you created? Lyra looked uncertainly at Orion. He nodded, giving her courage. She lifted her hand and traced the symbol slowly in the air. This time, she controlled her energy, focusing on each line. The symbol formed perfectly. It glowed bright, but not wild. It moved gently, swaying like a soft flame. The teacher's eyes widened. This is remarkable. Your energy resonation is unusually strong for a beginner. Lyra's cheeks warmed. She couldn't tell if it was embarrassment or pride. Maybe it was both. The teacher placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "There is nothing wrong with your ability. You just need guidance, and you will get it." Lyra felt something shift deep inside her. A small hope. A new beginning. By the end of the day, she walked out of the classroom differently. Her posture was straighter, her eyes brighter. She still felt scared. Fear doesn't vanish in a single moment, but she felt something stronger than fear. She felt possibility. As she reached her room, she whispered to herself, just like last night, but with more meaning this time. I belong here. And now, she believed it a little more. The sun on Lumeria 4 rose slowly, painting the sky in soft shades of violet and silver. The delicate light spread across the learning colony, touching every tower, every glass bridge, and every quiet path. Lyra walked toward the main hall, with her tablet held carefully against her chest. Her steps were firmer today, steady in a way she never thought she could walk. She wasn't fearless. Fear still lived inside her, but it no longer controlled her heart. Ever since the moment her strong energy wave surprised the entire class, everything around her had begun to change. Some students who once ignored her now looked at her with open curiosity. A few of them even nodded politely when she passed by. Others watched her with confusion, unsure how someone who struggled so much could suddenly show such rare ability. But no one laughed at her openly anymore. No one whispered behind her as loudly as before. Of course, she knew some still doubted her. Doubt didn't disappear in a day. But that doubt didn't crush her the way it once did. She held on to Orion's words, repeating them inside her heart whenever fear tried to rise. You belong here. When she entered the classroom, Orion was already there, organizing a set of training crystals. Their glow reflected softly on his face. He looked up the moment she stepped in and gave a warm smile, the kind that reached his eyes. "Good morning, Lyra," he said. She felt a quiet warmth spread through her chest. "Good morning." He noticed the way she held her tablet. Her fingers were no longer trembling. "Ready for today?" She nodded softly. "Yes. I want to learn more." She stared. She nodded softly. The teacher began the class by reviewing the previous day's memory symbols. Lyra followed along carefully, tracing each shape with slow, focused movements. Her symbols were still not perfect, but they were far smoother than before. Each one glowed with a calm, steady brilliance that reflected her growing confidence. But the real challenge came when the teacher introduced the advanced resonance symbols, symbols that required emotional balance and strong control over memory energy. Even experienced students sometimes struggled with them. The air in the hall grew tense with concentration as everyone lifted their hands to practice. Lyra stared at the new symbol for a long moment, her heart tightening. It was complex, far more complex than anything she had tried before. She felt doubt creeping back inside her. What if she couldn't do it? What if she made another mistake? Orion sensed her hesitation. He stepped closer and spoke softly enough that only she could hear. You don't need to do it perfectly. Just try. His voice steadied her. She lifted her hand and began to trace the first line. Her energy flickered, unsteady. She paused and adjusted her breath. Her silver eyes focused sharply, and she traced again. Slowly, carefully. A faint glow followed her finger. Then the next line. Then the next. Her movements were shaky at first, but they smoothed out as she found her rhythm. She remembered how Orion had taught her to slow down, breathe gradually, and let her emotions settle. As she did this, the symbol began forming in the air, glowing, swirling softly like a small floating ribbon. Students around her stopped to watch. Even the teacher turned with surprise, eyes widening. Lyra finally completed the symbol. It remained steady in the air, glowing softly, gently pulsing like a living thing. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then the teacher spoke. Lyra, that is, advanced level control. She blinked in disbelief. I just followed the shapes. I just followed the shapes. No, the teacher replied firmly. You guided the energy with your emotions. Only a few Lumerians can do that. Lyra's breath caught. She didn't know whether to feel scared or proud. Her hands trembled again, but this time, not from fear. From amazement. Zarin, who had doubted her the loudest before, stared at her with surprise. His expression softened, though he didn't say a word. It was the first time Lyra saw him, not smirking. After class ended, the teacher called Lyra and Orion aside. The room emptied slowly as the other students left. Lyra stood quietly, while Orion waited patiently beside her. The teacher folded his hands behind his back. We have reviewed your performance these past days. Your progress is unusual. Extraordinary, even. His tone was serious, but not unkind. There are only two explanations. Either you have hidden talent that no one recognized before, or your emotions awaken your energy at a level that is rarely seen. Lyra lowered her eyes. I didn't hide anything. I just didn't know how to learn. No one taught me. What? I lowered her eyes. Lyra lowered her eyes. The teacher's expression softened. Then it is even more impressive that you've come this far. Thanks. The sender. Well, 43-9. 45. Orion spoke gently. She only needed someone to support her. The teacher nodded. And she has that now. You may choose your learning path. We can place you in a special advanced program, or you may continue in the regular class. The choice is yours. Lyra hesitated. The idea of a special program frightened her. She didn't want to be studied like something unusual. She didn't want to be separated again or treated like a tool. I want to learn in the regular class, she said softly. With everyone else. The teacher nodded with respect. Very well. You will stay here. Relief washed over Lyra so strongly she nearly lost her balance. Orion gave her a reassuring look, silently proud of her courage. After the meeting, they walked through the quiet glass garden behind the learning hall. The plants shimmered with gentle light, their leaves glowing in pastel colors. The garden was peaceful, filled with soft humming from the energy crystals planted along the pathways. Lyra stopped beside one of the glowing trees and let her fingers brush the leaves. I never thought I would stay here, she said in a quiet voice. I always believed I didn't deserve a place like this. Orion stood beside her, close but respectful. You deserved it long before today. No, she whispered. Back home. They always told me I wasn't good enough. They said I shouldn't learn. They said I didn't have the mind for it. Orion listened quietly. Lyra continued, her voice trembling slightly. I believed them. I thought something was wrong with me. I tried to study by myself once, but I couldn't understand anything. They caught me reading, and, after that, I never tried again. Sadness filled Orion's eyes. They never gave you a chance. She nodded softly. I thought all of them were right. Even when I came here. I came because I was told to serve others in the colony. I wasn't supposed to study. I was supposed to help the teachers clean and organize. Her voice trembled. They put me in the class only because they didn't want me walking around with nothing to do. Orion felt anger rise inside him, not at her, but at the people who had treated her as if she had no worth. But he kept his voice calm. Lyra, listen to me. What they told you wasn't the truth. You weren't unable to learn. You were never taught. They trapped you in a place where you couldn't grow. Lyra. Her eyes glistened. But why would they do that? Because some people like to control others, Orion said. And because they fear what someone like you might become if you learn to stand strong. Lyra looked at him quietly, letting his words sink into her heart. She felt something warm and powerful rising inside her, not anger, not fear, but strength. You're not the person they tried to make you believe you were, Orion continued. You're someone who learns quickly, someone with rare ability, someone who tries even when she's scared. He smiled softly. And someone who belongs here. Lyra closed her eyes, letting the words fill the parts of her that had stayed empty for so long. For the first time, she felt her heart opening to a future she had never imagined. As they walked back toward the main building, she held her tablet differently, not like something heavy or frightening, but like something that belonged to her, something she had earned. That evening, when she sat in her small room, she opened her tablet again. She traced the symbols slowly, steadily, watching them float and glow. She practiced until her fingers ached, not because she was afraid to fail, but because she wanted to grow. Before sleeping, she wrote something new on her tablet. Not a symbol Orion had shown her, not a line from the class. A message she made with her own effort. She walked to where Orion was checking energy crystals for the next day's lesson. He looked up as she approached. Orion, she said softly, I want to give you something. She handed him the tablet. On the screen was a single line, her handwriting uneven but proud. Thank you for helping me find myself. Orion read it slowly, feeling a warmth touch his heart. He looked at her with gentle pride. You wrote this on your own? She nodded, shy but glowing with confidence. It's perfect, he said. Lyra smiled with a happiness that reached deep into her spirit. Her journey wasn't over. She still had much to learn. She still had challenges to face. But now she knew something she had never known before. She was capable. She was growing. She belonged. And for the first time in her life, she walked forward without fear.